welcome to The Wisdom of Loving. Now, this show is really all about empowering you. I want to first, of course, explain who we are. This is all brought to you or powered by G100. And G100, if you haven't heard about it, is a global organization, a global movement with women, female leaders from across the globe, leading and, of course, supporting and empowering others. Why 100? Because we have wings, and you see my halo, we have wings in order to facilitate important topics of the day. Now, you do see my first guest here, and clearly he's not female. I'll get into that in a second. Because just, women leaders, but we work with everybody who's supporting similar ideas. Now, I happen to be the country chair for Germany of the Oneness and Wisdom Wing, therefore wisdom. Jennifer Randive, the Maverick CEO, is actually our global chair. And what we're really trying to achieve in our wing specifically is to unite, to co-create, to collaborate, and share wisdom, empower others, regardless of who and where they are. Now, my guest today is, of course, Axel Tillmann. I've known this gentleman for a little bit, and then he volunteered with a little bit of pressure to be one of my foremost advisors in the G100 Oneness and Wisdom Wing. So therefore, it makes sense that I have one of my advisors start us out with a conversation about the topic of this show, the wisdom of loving. And before I tell you a little bit more about Axel, I also want to mention that wisdom is a very old word. And when we're thinking about the word wisdom, we have a lot of different associations. It was really first used in about the 15th century, but the origins are much earlier than that. Now, Axel is not just my advisor. He brings with him, in my opinion, a lot of wisdom, the way that I identify it. He has lived in different countries. He is cross-cultural. He has a vast experience in business, in life, also not just business and alpha consult, not just pitch global. He also addresses issues about health. And Modi Health is also one of his foremost companies. So he is a go-to marketing strategist and has lived a life already. Axel, I want to thank you first for your time. When you first heard the title, The Wisdom of Loving, what did you think?
First of all, Dr. Natalie Forrest, we have to introduce you as well. Thank you so much for not only having me as an advisor, but also on the program. And before I answer your question, I need to say the importance of us coming together, men and women, because men have not made a lot of progress in the last 2,000 years in terms of bringing the world together. And women have not had a chance to actually be an equal part into this world. And we need that desperately because both things need to come together. It's almost like giving birth to a child. A woman cannot do it by herself. It needs the male side to it as well, right?
Yes.
So our universe, our life is best determined if we get both genders equally to the table.
I could not agree more. The wisdom of both genders.
The wisdom of both genders, yes, and the wisdom of all cultures at the same time.
Yes.
That is also, we need to put this also in perspective because we need to be cross-cultural and and combined genders. I don't want to say cross genders, but in basically both genders have to come together to make it actually work. Now, the wisdom of loving. Do you know that the term love was already being used in songs around 400 BC. Troubadours were singing about the dipolar occurrence of love, which is a positive feeling and can be painful at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Remember the song "Love Hurts"?
Oh.
I mean, just to take one, and
Yeah.
it has been the most sung about topic. Over 100 million different songs have been made about it, but we know nothing about it, in my opinion, because as a famous book here in LA once tried to say, "Return to Love." I have to say that even the author didn't understand what that means.
Interesting. All right.
I'm very much, I mean, it's very difficult to be in a permanent loving space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the daily challenges surrounding us let us forget what the focal point is. And maybe we need to find methodologies, like whenever the emotions get off center, that we need to immediately step away from everything and start meditating to get us back to the center. I think if we would have the wisdom of loving daily, every second of our lives would look much better, because we shall not operate out of fear.
Mm-hmm. We shall not operate out of fear.
The
And you
absence of
said,
love is fear.
yes. And so, but you're also saying that it's hard to consistently operate out of love. What about operating out of anger?
You know, anger is an instinctual move that can overtake you like an exploding bomb.
Yes.
Think of how people, for example, the flight decision, that is the anima in us. You are in a dangerous situation, let's say on a road. Happened to me the other day. There was a guy that accelerated, and I couldn't get into the space despite that I had my signal out. And immediately got an angry feeling up, because he also endangered me, right?
Yes.
So there are different forms of anger, and I think in general is when we are endangered in what we want to do, how we see our partner, how business and life. Every single time that construct is endangered, we might become angry, like a roaring lion that is normally very peaceful, but when the family is endangered, they jump up and try to defend.
Absolutely. So love, you mentioned there have been, I forget the number, many songs written about love. And there is a difference, of course, between love and loving. So how can we be more loving? You mentioned meditation on a daily basis. How can we be more loving to each other?
So when you get out in the morning, I do this in the bed when I get into the state of almost being awake. I go back into, even still in the bed, and try to meditate for focusing on positive outcomes and goals in the given day. And I think that starts out your day, of viewing it from a loving point of view, right? And every single time you are facing adversity, you should try to refocus on this positive goal setting. But that does not mean, in my opinion, that you continue to surround yourself with people that are only out there to hurt, which are not loving per se, they are egoistic, or there is only so much energy you can put out in a given day. And I think you need to focus on being around people that share your wisdom and your loving.
Good tips. So surround yourself with people who are also the loving kind, and start the day out, refocus. Why should we? What's wrong with living in anger, with living in fear? Why should we be more loving?
For one, it should be your self-interest, because negative energy, which non-loving, creates actually illnesses inside your body. So we always believe it's only what you eat or what you do, but really your own emotions. Epigenetics is a heavy topic coming up that actually makes clear that it's not actually your gene that are the root cause of the problems. It's actually something in your subconscious, in your emotional, we say in German, emotionales Kostüm, the fabric we are made of. So don't you want to have a healthy life on a daily basis? Just focus on yourself. So if you are permanently angry and unhappy, you will get sick. You will get sick. And in our joint network is somebody whom I'm working with, and she wants to work on the soul. And I said, we need to work on the soul and the wealth creation at the same time. When you look at people that are only chasing the dollars without love and without soul, they are unhappy. There's probably, the world is full of million and billionaires that are extremely unhappy and sick. Why? Because they lost that one balance, which is the fulfillment of the soul. Now, can you do good in the world if you only have soul and loving? That becomes more difficult because the world is controlled by money. So the balance between the two is what is actually required to actually bring a positive to the world.
Fascinating. You are the go-to marketer.
Yeah.
You have Pitch Global, you have Alpha Consult. The marketplace, advertising, pitching is not normally associated with a lot of love. Let me put it that way. It seems to be a pretty brutal environment. How do you add love to what you do?
By giving critique. So I'm not a motivational speaker. I leave this up to others, because I believe firmly my love is expressed if I critique your expression and give my experience. I have listened to 2,500 pitches, worked with about 10% of the companies, and have learned how to extract what is needed from the VCs, the investors, or the marketplace, to want to absorb your product. So when I make a critique, and do not say, oh, this was fantastic, but say, listen, there is this, and this, and this that you have not done correctly. We need to focus and extract it out of your mind. This is a form of love. Not a form of anger, because I wouldn't even spend time with somebody whom I'm angry about, trying to actually show them the right way, the way I have learned or experienced it leads to success. So yes, it's a tough market, because probably 1 in 1,000 companies gets the funding that they are seeking. We need to also understand venture capitalists and angels do not look for reasons to invest. They're looking immediately for a reason not to invest. So how do you overcome the instinct of flight? I wrote an article on my LinkedIn newsletter where I pitch to the 3 brains. And the first brain is the reptile brain. You have 30 to 60 seconds before the reptile brain says, get out of here. And there is nothing you can do thereafter to convince them otherwise. Did you know that the gut instinct that we have, which men more often have ignored than women, but it's still in existence, gives you answers that are 85% of the time right. And if you consciously think about the problem, you're only 50% of the time right.
I don't have the data, but absolutely. My gut instinct is my best compass. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Fascinating. So you mentioned a very important word, and I think there are cultural differences. You said, if I critique someone, it shows love. There are some cultures, and I would claim that the US is one of them, having lived there for a little bit, where critique sometimes is understood as negative criticism. So I think it's very important that you point out, when you give somebody your time to help them improve their pitch or give them some advice on what not to wear, or maybe, you know, how to hold the fork or something, it's because you care.
Right.
Very important. How often do you run into situations where you give love your way and it's being misunderstood?
Most of the people coming through Pitch Global are appreciative,
yes,
at least on the surface. But I have seen people come sometimes back several times, so between 2 and 5 times. If nothing in their pitch has changed, you know that your message was not received.
Yes.
And then there is nothing I can do. I can be wrong.
Yeah.
Honestly, I can be wrong. You think that my message was wrong, then don't adopt it, but don't complain if you don't get funding.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, or don't complain if you don't get customers. So I just found, you know, like you are from Germany, you lived in the US, you went back to Germany, something that I cannot easily foresee doing myself, other than for 30 days or so. But Germany is a country where entrepreneurship is as desired as in any other country. But I do not see that the country itself wants to help these entrepreneurs to be equally successful as we are in the United States. All the unicorns that we know of in recent years, with the exception India is coming very strongly up.
Yes.
But all the unicorns have been created in the US. Tesla was not created in Germany. It was created in California, where they never built a car in the first place. But where should it have been built? It should have been built in Germany, where we have BMW, Mercedes, Audi, Porsche. The top-end cars in the world are built over there, an ecosystem that understands car manufacturing and car design, second to none. But it didn't happen there. And that there are reasons. And recently I mentored several German companies, and they agreed, once they became aware what the handicapped reasons are, that they need to pivot and come to the US. We call that Delaware flip. And by the way, the biggest successful story of German company is SAP. And its CEO said, if I would have not taken the virtual headquarters from Germany to the US, we would have never learned what it takes to be such a world company.
This reminds me of the, I guess it's 5 principles that are often associated with wisdom. You know, having done a little bit of research, it appears that those 5 characteristics are curiosity, creativity, judgment, perspective, and love of learning.
Right.
So from what you just said, I would assume that maybe, let's say, the creativity or the judgment or the perspective, something or some of those principles are missing in Germany still. So maybe we're still needing to learn.
I think there is a systemic problem. One is in the legal framework that is a handicap to any growth. I was sitting on the board of directors of a semiconductor company here that we ultimately sold to Intel for $300 million. There was a term sheet a year earlier by Intel, which they reneged, and the company was pushed forward no longer with real investment, but only with month-to-month loans, so to speak.
Yeah.
We pushed about $10 million in debt forward during this time. Any German CEO would have been in jail under the German bankruptcy laws, right? So German companies, just the client I have recently worked with, try to avoid this burden by reactivating their engineering time and do not know what balance sheet problems they are creating by having an Activa of $1.5 million for their developed product, because this creates a problem when you exit Germany into a different foreign jurisdiction, because then the German IRS, the Finanzamt, is coming and wants their shares. Right. If the company would have been zero value on the book, you transfer the money for $1, the money to the company for $1, and you're done. They do all kinds of tricks. The second thing is the aggressiveness of growth is not embraced. Now, do I embrace the extreme aggressiveness of growth that some people promote in the US? No, I have did some analysis that nature's growth is in Fibonacci sequence and not in hockey stick or exponential growth. But I think in Europe, they are at 10%, maybe 20% of even Fibonacci growth, because it's a more timid growth. And what people don't realize is the competition doesn't sleep. So if I put you as a German company against an American company with a similar technology, but they have 10 times the money in, guess who is going to win? Because they can have a better strategy in execution.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the whole culture is very different there. So for the final question, you've shared with us some ideas on how you create more loving, how you share your wisdom. How, since we're talking business, how would you suggest Germany, in the example that you gave, or any other country like that, could accrue more loving wisdom and thereby be more supportive of entrepreneurs?
That's a very good question. I think I actually offer the opportunity to get me into the country for 30 days. I'm working there with a couple of organizations right now, one in Berlin and one in Düsseldorf, that I would actually come in and not only teach startup entrepreneurs, but also what we call in Germany the Mittelstand, the M from the SMB world. If they feel they are ready to come to the United States, I would teach and talk about the fundamentals. And I think those entrepreneurs that have created success in Germany will then be able and empowered to give back to the ecosystem. And therefore, they may advocate for changes in law and mentality so that we can actually progress. I give you one example, which it's so archaic. When you start a GmbH in Germany, a limited organization, you ultimately, all parties need to, they have a contract. You know how a contract happens here in the US? You get an email and you can print it on your laser printer if you want to, but you don't even have to, and the contract is done. In Germany, you have to go to a notary, and it's not notary public like in the US, it's a notary where they bind everything into a fancy booklet and with a red cord and a seal, and then there is an official reading. They read that then contract to you, and they're gonna charge for this the same amount of money that the lawyer did to put the contract together. So two parties which have agreed, or five parties which have agreed on the terms, need to go through this mandatory procedure, which is an absolute waste of time, because if it wouldn't, why wouldn't we do it in the US, right? I don't know a single case where people actually say, "Oh, that document was never read to me if I would have just known," right? So,
Yeah.
uh, this is only one example of probably hundreds of examples that make business so much more difficult in Germany. And we need to ease up on that starchiness and embrace a more American way. We need to change the bankruptcy laws fundamentally. People are afraid that they get haunted for still 30 years if something goes wrong. And we need to get investors there that understand the Silicon Valley way, right? There is a lot of people that have a lot of money that could be the first generation of investment,
right.
But they need to do this in the Silicon Valley way and not the German way, because otherwise you will not get to the success curve, and ultimately the good companies are fleeing the country and going elsewhere. So an ecosystem like Germany and the German government should be very smart to get the best experts from outside, maybe a lot of expats like me, because I have lived in both cultures, and say, this is what we need to do to make Germany a success. Because we cannot just live on the old companies, Siemens, BMW, Mercedes. This is not where the next economic wave comes from.
Thank you for sharing that love that you clearly still have for Germany and for business, because you would not have taken the time to share your wisdom if there wasn't love involved.
Right.
Wonderful. Thank you, Axel. Great conversation. I appreciate your time. And I also appreciate your time as an advisor to the G100 Germany Oneness and Wisdom Wing. And to everybody else who is watching this, listening, please remember that this is a recurring show. And if you want to reach out to any of the guests who initially are going to be advisors and chairs, and then many other guests, please feel free to reach out to them, because the contact is below. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.